This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Monday, July 1st, 2024, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I will be joined by National Pork Board members Jess Stevens and Rich Deaton. They were recently at the Giant BBQ Battle in Washington, D.C., and are going to tell us about their interactions with consumers as they talked about U.S. pork and also honored the U.S. military.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day, we are joined now by Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net. Well, Robin, going back to last week on Friday, we got those reports from USDA, the acreage and also the quarterly grain stocks reports, and we knew it wasn't very friendly to corn in those reports, and that kind of seemed to be the case today. What did we see play out in the grains?
Yeah, it carried through today on from that report, and but surprisingly, and giving some credence to the market was we did come back toward the end of the day. So the corn was really kind of mixed, getting near the close here, and so it looked a little bit more dismal early on in the day, but maybe that's been factored into the market right now. Now, I don't know, you can look at all kinds of weather forecasts and make some kind of determination, which way you want to look at it and whether it's beneficial or not. The report on Friday obviously caught everybody off guard as far as the acreage number was concerned. Less acres than last year on the corn, but yet way above expectations. More bean acres, but close to expectations. So soybeans have been able to hold pretty well on Friday, and then today also. And some part of that was probably fueled by the real push in soybean oil, which was up over 200 points. And so that's providing some of the fuel underneath that market. Meal really didn't follow suit with both soybeans and oil, just kind of held its own. But the probably a bigger push cue in the grain markets was the wheat market. That was up double-digit gains, 14, 16 cents higher. And I think the wheat was probably more so because they didn't make quite as big of an adjustment. Wheat acres were, a little bit higher, but not that much higher. And we were just looking at something a little bit different on that. Plus the stocks were not as bearish really as we saw in the corn situation. And we'll talk about that. But first, let's go to export inspections. Today, corn was at 32.265 million bushels. Last week it was 45.390, so it's down 13.1 million bushels from last week. A little more negativity on that standpoint. Soybeans, 11.135 million bushels compared to 12.856, and that was down 1.7. The big deal was wheat at 2.042 million bushels. Last week it was 15.699, so we're down 13.7 million bushels. That's huge. Big change when you look at a chart per se on what we had in the wheat export inspections. So that in itself should have been really negative to the market. But, I've said that before, that the inspections and the sales somewhat is kind of digested quickly by the market, and they look past that. Those are just something that happens from week to week. It's the cumulative that really is more important once we move through the marketing year. So not a real big issue there. That's a market influencer, but quite a significant change as far as wheat was concerned. Now the quarterly stocks, going back to that, June 1st corn stocks were at 4.99 billion bushels. Of that, quarterly stocks report that we didn't break down on Friday, 61% were on farm. And that's the highest on-farm stocks held by producers in 20 plus years. So that's the real negative aspect of that market, that farmers are holding a lot on farm. That's got to come to the market. So that's a more of a bearish cloud hanging over that market right now. So that a lot of that's going to be coming to the market from now until harvest. So lends itself to price rallies being short-lived or being minimal, I should say, unless we see something dramatic happening on an export interest that we really got to buy that out of the farmer's hands. But that's pretty negative situation. Soybean stocks at 970 million bushels, 48% of those are on farm, and that's the highest since 2006. Wheat stocks were at 702 million bushels. 20% of that's on farm. Not a big deal. They didn't even make a comparison back to previous years. Looking back, so not probably a little bit more providing some of the support as far as the wheat market is concerned, because that's not a real big amount on farmers' hands at this point in time. Now, we do have crop progress coming out this afternoon. Corn is expected at 68% good to excellent. Last week it was 69%. A year ago it was 51%. So still running really good, good to excellent conditions on that, which is really playing into now with a higher acreage than what the trade had expected. Soybeans at 66% good to excellent, 67% last week, 50% a year ago. Spring wheat at 70% good to excellent, 71% last week, and 48% a year ago. Winter wheat is expected at 52% good to excellent, same as last week, 40% last year. And winter wheat harvest at 54%, 40% last week. A year ago, our pace was at 37% for winter wheat harvested.
Let's flip over now to the other side of the ag marketplace and what happened in the protein complex.
Well, when we look over at cattle, there was not much interest by traders today. I think as the holiday shortened week is really kind of going to keep things a little bit subdued. So they failed to buy aggressively into the market. Now, last week we did see northern dressed cattle trade $1 higher at 312, and southern live cattle at 190. That was steady with the previous week. Now, that steadiness in that market really probably kind of put a little disappointment as far as the trade was concerned. There was some hope they'd see something higher, but that didn't materialize. So we saw just a lackluster trade today, and they're looking at the holiday shortened week. So are packers going to be aggressive, or do they not need to be quite so aggressive? We don't know how many were purchased ahead last week. The trade was real late on Friday. So it's difficult to know exactly where we're going to be as far as were they able to purchase ahead for this week or not. Now, the box beef continues to remain strong. At the midday print today, we had choice up $3.56 and select up $2.36. That's really continues to show strong consumer demand. Now, normally we would see some of the dog days of summer coming in, we'd see a little bit slower beef demand, but we're not seeing that so far this year. Now, on the weekly weighted averages, prices in all the 5 categories in the live market, 5 states, we see another record high in the cash prices, and in the dressed. In the 5 states, we see 4 of those at record highs again. So we're continuing to march higher as far as the overall weighted averages, what's being paid, and the strength in the box beef sector. On the hogs found some early support today. but that petered out as it ran its course. Support did not continue from cash and cutouts. Now, cash was not reported yet this morning because of packer confidentiality, but cutouts were slightly lower. Really the overall demand is lacking. We anticipated, or the trade has been seeing lackluster demand. Earlier, we should have seen, or the anticipation was for stronger pork prices, which usually happens in the June-July timeframe, but that's just been lacking so far this year, even though we've had some fairly good export sales. Now, Friday's move, we did see some support, mostly coming from the end of the month and end of quarter. It wasn't really supported largely by cash and cutouts, although they were higher on Friday. Cash was slightly higher, cutouts were significantly higher, but more of the movement was because of the end of the month and end of the quarter positioning. Commitment of Traders report that was released after the close showed funds. They added 7,556 short positions, which is bringing their net short positions to 7,873 contracts. Now, the last 2 weeks, they first went short. Last week, Commitment of Traders, or the previous week, I should say, they went slightly short. Now they added a lot of shorts to that over the period from last week up to last week, Tuesday. So they hadn't been short in that market for quite a while, but now they're piling onto those short positions. So it's going to be difficult to see that market rally. But right now it looks like it wants to try to stay sideways because we've thrown a lot of bearishness at this market. And maybe it's trying to build some support, even though we're not seeing a turn in demand or the stronger cash trend.
He is Robin Schmahl with agmarket.net, our guest here on Monday. Robin, what's the best way for our viewers and listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
Well, they can call me directly at 877-256-3253, or they can go to our website, agmarket.net. They can contact us. There's an 844 number there, and somebody will be ready to pick up the phone, answer any questions, or to provide any information or some help that you would be looking for.
Thanks so much for the time. Always appreciate it, and have a great 4th of July week.
All right. You as well. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you to Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net for our market summary. Let's turn now to the closing numbers, which can be found under the markets tab of our website at iowaagnet.com.
July corn closes down 3 3/4 at $3.93.5. July soybeans up 8 1/4 at $11.58 3/4. July soybean meal up $1.90 at $3.6240. July soybean oil up $1.58 at $45.35. Chicago wheat up 10 1/2 at $5.64 even. Minneapolis wheat up 11 even at $6.24 even. Kansas City hard red wheat up 12 3/4 at $6 1/4 cents. And July oats up 5 3/4 at $3.09 3/4. On the Merc, August live cattle down $1.10 at $184.32. August feeder cattle down $1.87 at $257.42. July lean hogs up 10 cents at $89.67. July pork cutout up $1.32 at $100.70. Class 3 milk is up 2 pennies at $19.47.
That's our ag market coverage for today. It is time now to take a break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff. And up next, I will be joined by National Pork Board members Jess Stevens and Rich Deaton. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
On today's show, I speak with National Pork Board members Jess Stevens and Rich Deaton. They were recently at the Giant BBQ Battle in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall, got the chance to talk with consumers and also to honor the U.S. military. You're watching Ag Matters PM. Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I am joined today by Rich Deaton and Jess Stevens with the National Pork Board. They are also Ohio pork producers. And I wanted to talk with you guys today about the Giant BBQ Battle in Washington, D.C. that recently took place. Rich, it sounds like a fun event. Could you tell us about the event and kind of how it went, please?
Absolutely. It was a great event to be involved in. To give context, it was the event was a block off the mall and a couple blocks from the Capitol. So we were downtown, literally downtown Washington, D.C. There was thousands of people that showed up on Saturday and Sunday. We were fortunate enough to partner with Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, and Iowa pork producers, along with the national. And the partnership was involved with the USO event, where they brought the different teams of chefs from the branches of the military, and they had a competition. So people would buy a ticket. That $10 ticket would go to the USO. That gave them opportunities to go through and get one of the entrees from each of the teams of chefs from the military. And then they voted with their ticket. That voting booth was where we were at. And so that gave Jess and I and others to dialogue with the participants. It's a great event. We had a lot of fun.
So, Jess, having the event on the National Mall like that in Washington, D.C., obviously you can see where that was headed, trying to get some eyeballs on the event, and to have it in the heart of D.C. like that, very cool. Was that the significance of the event, to have it in a space like that where everybody could be involved, but you really are in the heart of Washington, D.C. and kind of at the front of everybody's mind?
Yes, I think our intent with this event was to go outside the box. A lot of the time, as pork producers, we talk a lot in our own echo chamber in the Midwest to other like-minded people like us. So this was an event that the intent was to get outside and communicate with people on the coast, minorities that we're promoting pork to and having initiatives, and people who might think differently than us, and find synergies with them as consumers. Tell them the story of pork from our farm and from the pork board's perspective, and connect with them. The other major piece of this was the military component, and we were very excited to be able to support all the branches of military that were there and their chefs. So that was a huge piece of the event as well, making sure that we showed support for our nation's troops, especially right in front of the 4th of July here, thanking them for all they do for us.
And Rich, there was a pork chop challenge that was involved in this, and then also a donation to a local food bank, and that was put together by, you already mentioned the separate state pork producers associations. So why is it important for those groups to work together for an event like this and to donate to a good cause?
Absolutely. It really fits one of the We Care principles that we all agree to or are involved with every day. And a big one there is caring about our community. And so it's a great opportunity to have a check of $100,000 that went to support a local food bank there in D.C., where, as we know and we read in the news, there's a lot of challenged people, a lot of challenges with families to feed their families. And so this is really helping out. And it's always good to reach out and share the blessings that we've had.
And Jess, when you have an event like that where you're working with the various pork state groups, and like we know you are involved in the National Pork Board, but when those groups come together from the different states, is that fun for you to see what the different states are doing and to collaborate together to work on an event?
Yes, it's exciting for me to see that we all have the same goals. And Giant Eagle, who sponsored the event, is a retail partner that supports pork products in all of those states, more or less. So coming together to use our budgets for strategic investment is a playbook that I hope is duplicated by future events.
Jess, when you were talking to those consumers that stopped by and they were interested, were there people that had no clue the event was going on that were walking by and had a question for you? What kind of things were they asking you about?
A lot of the conversation was around the flavor profiles with the food, because it was a tasting event. They stopped at each station to get one dish from each of the military chefs. But the other piece was questions about pigs and how farms are. A lot of them had never been on a farm. So I kind of explained, I'm a small niche operator. I have hogs outside. They're in the woodlot, but that's not common. Most of them are in a barn. And here's the why. It's pretty hot today. It was like 95 degrees on the pavement. Pigs in the barn have climate control as well as in the winter. So kind of putting it in terms they could relate to, like with their own self-comfort, but trying to have a conversation about animal welfare and the importance of what pig farmers are doing to care for their animals in all the different ways that we raise hogs today.
And I would imagine as well, Rich, for an event like this that's held in Washington, D.C., there's quite a few people in Washington, D.C. that have no idea about how a hog operation is run. They've probably never even seen a hog building. So was that kind of the sense you got as well? The chance to interact with people when you take pork to them, you can really have those conversations that maybe they wouldn't even have.
Absolutely. It's hard to replace the value of a face-to-face conversation with consumers, especially if they have some concerns about misconceptions they've read or heard in other venues. And so the opportunity to look in the eye of the consumer and tell them that we do care for our people, we care for our pigs and the environment, because this is the space that we live in as well. And it's not any different than they care for their families. So that value's immeasurable to have that eye contact and face-to-face conversation.
Jess, is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience here in Iowa about the event, or anything else you're working with at National Pork Board? I
think it was personally important to me, as my husband is a pilot in the Air Force and has been active duty for over 20 years. So finding that synergy between the military and pork producers, some of the people that are both the backbones of the freedoms that we have here in the U.S. Was a great harmony for me personally, but also I think a messaging we can continue to use as we promote pork as a nutritious protein.
And Rich, for you, is there anything else you'd like to let our audience know about?
Sure. It was a really cool event where we got to interact with the teams of chefs there from the different branches of the military. There's a Navy and Army put together a team. We had the Air Force, we had the Marines and the Coast Guard. And so we had opportunity to visit with each one of those teams. The chef leading the team of the Navy Army, she was actually the chef for Vice President Harris. And so interacting with the chefs that have that prepare a lot of food for very influential people is invaluable. You can't replace that, and you don't do it by just sending them an email or something through the mail. So having, again, that interaction with the chefs is invaluable.
They are Rich Deaton and Jess Stevens with the National Pork Board. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you to Rich Deaton and Jess Stevens, members of the National Pork Board, for joining today's show. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and TikTok. And you can find our videos and previous episodes of AM/PM on our YouTube channel. Don't forget as well our free morning, midday, and closing market podcast, which are found on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. Also make sure and check out our daily Iowa Ag Matters podcast. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. On behalf of Riley Smith, Dustin Huffman, Quentin Slater, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.